No, clap.
Slow clap the beginning.
Very clever, existing like the universe always does. Not terribly original, is it? I tell you what, another thing I can do to make you visible to the naked eye is put this pillow just here. Ah, that's it. Look at there we are. Clever.
You've put me on a small cushion.
I've put you on a small butterfly
seat.
Imprinted cushion. Yes, as one might call it, a booster cush.
Is it a hassock?
Not cush. That's something else. There's no booster cush in this podcast. It's family friendly.
That could be a character, couldn't it? Booster Cush.
Booster Cush. Where would he be from? I think he'd be American.
The
name's Booster Cush.
The name's Booster Cush.
Booster. That's right. Yeah, no, he's definitely from Tennessee. Booster Cush.
Hello, I'm gonna eat some biscuits.
Biscuits with Booter on the top. Booter.
I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. My name's Booster Cush. Welcome to Noughty Kids, the podcast where we explore the best of that halcyon age when things were better, dungarees were worse, and the Spice Girls ruled with an iron fist. No, I'm not doing a second run of that. That was brilliant.
It is, of course, the late 90s and early noughties.
I'm Joey Hart, 1994 till present.
And I'm Josh Hinton, 1994 to inflate the life jacket, blow hard down this nozzle. This week we're tumbling down the rabbit hole of memory and landing on the sunny shores of holidays past. Is that a sunny shore?
That's the sunny shore of holidays past.
I liked it. I'd also like to just, make sure that our listeners from the southern end of England land realised just there that it's holidays past. It's not holidays past.
Holidays past. You see,
you say past?
I do a mix these days. Partly to blame, Radio 4. Obviously, it's their fault that I don't speak with a thick northern accent. And partly because of my wife, who of course is, and I don't say this lightly, she is from the south.
But she's not just from the south, is she? She's also from the west.
She's from the south of also Wales.
She's from the south of also Wales and also England, and as a result, speaks like the Queen until she gets agitated, at which point she becomes Rod Gilbert.
Or vaguely tired. Exactly, and then it's full Rod Gilbert at that point. Oh, she turns thick and Welsh by then, with a tog rating system. A tog rating system.
Lovely.
Lovely. Oh, yeah, shall I say it? Lovely.
Well,
anyway,
she's from the south of England.
She's from that's the south of England side of it.
She's like lovely.
Tog rating system. That went Dutch there.
That was Welsh Michael Caine. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Or rather, we're getting sideways from ourselves.
Mr. Batman.
Mr. Batman. I knew Mr. Batman was going to come out then. I could feel him. I could feel him stalking in the bushes.
But he's dead. Anyway, holidays is what we wanted to talk about.
Yes, Mr. Batman. But before we do...
Oh, have you got a Foley?
You've forgotten. How dare you?
Foley gotten.
Foley gotten.
A Foley gotten it.
A Foley gotten.
Oh, is that it's a small orange.
It is what you think it is. A small orange. Okay, the Foley for this week is a musical Foley. And it goes like this. Or it might do. Let's just see if I haven't played this in ages. We've now painted a scene. It's a mystical mountain. There are dwarves mining gold in them, there hills. And over the hill comes Josh and Joey on holiday. A piano?
Oh, sorry, was it not a piano?
That was a piano, ladies and gentlemen. A piano played in an unconventional and some would say dangerous manner. It wasn't. It was a mandolin.
A mandarin.
A mandarin. It's a slightly sexist instrument. It should be called a person-dolin.
It's slightly different to a Cantonese, a lin.
Who is this, a mandolin? What are you saying, Cantonese? What's it got to do with Cantonese?
No, it's not a mandarin. It's a Canton.
Oh, I see. Okay. We're getting very tortuous here. I would like you to acknowledge my sexism joke. I thought that was quite funny.
I wasn't listening, I'm going to be honest.
Well, I said it was sexist and it shouldn't be called a mandolin. It should be called a person-dolin.
Oh, I see. Can you get a woman-dolin or is that just lin?
Well, exactly. It wouldn't need to be a woman to Lynn.
It's just
It was
Lynn.
already called Lynn.
Just call it Lynn.
This is Lynn.
This is Lynn.
She has 8 strings.
Highly strung.
So where did you go on your holidays? That's the real question that the listeners want to know. None of this sexist mandolin nonsense.
We went on holiday in a variety. We started in tents, and then we went
And then
past
got
tents.
slightly more gentle.
Yes, we went into the past.
I like it. We both see the joke coming and we both land on it exactly the same time. What was your joke?
This is why we're great friends. And sometimes
Exactly.
we both come up with different puns, and that's more fun.
And then they cancel each other out and silence prevails.
Yes, exactly. You end up with a collision of puns. They annihilate one another and release lots of energy in the form of laughter.
Exactly. Matter versus antimatter, pun versus anti-pun.
Exactly.
And we're left bereft, punless.
Who you're saying has got an anti-pun there?
Anti-pun. Anti-pun, a friend of a mandolin. Anti-pun and a mandolin. They love to sit over a cup of copper, a cup of tea, and discuss the world. You can tell it's been 2 or 3 weeks since we last did this podcast. The puns are shoving up behind us, and like we can't get them all out fast enough.
It's a hard life that we lead.
It's a difficult life
in this world of words and ways. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, what were we talking about? Are you asking me about my holidays?
I'm asking you about your holidays. Yes, that's what's on the agenda for our podcast reminiscing about the late 90s and early noughties. So we're looking specifically for late 90s and early noughties holidays to kick us off with anyway.
And to some lesser, though perhaps greater extent, the early noughties. Well, I would yes, exactly as I was saying, we started in tents. We had tents that we put in the car. It was my brother and I at that point, and my parents. They were there too. They drove the car. And we'd go on holiday in we had quite small cars. I remember one was called Popsy, was it called? And one was called Nippy. They all had small zoomy names because they were small zoomy cars. Popsy, was that a car? And we'll never know.
Popsy sounds rather like something you'd catch in the Crimean War.
Popsy, yes. It's a terrible disease where one of your arms falls off and reattaches to your left leg. Which doesn't help with camping, as you can imagine. We had we went on holiday. We had tents, and tents were great. And we'd go to the Lake District, or we went down to Somerset, I think, at one point, which is very, very far away. And we'd have to wake up incredibly early, and leave at like 5:30 in the morning, and it was dark, and we took our pillows with us, and we slept in the car, and it was all very, very exciting. Go on.
And when you did that, got up early in the morning to go on holiday, did you hear from the radio emitting the dulcet tones of one Sir Lord Knight Terry Wogan?
We didn't listen to Radio 2.
It was one of the great signifiers for me that we were going on holiday was
Terry
because my dad did a lot of driving around the country and he was a Radio 2 fan, and so usually we'd get up at hideous o'clock, pack everything into the car, and then my sister and I would sort of drift off again in the background, but my dad would always have Terry Wogan on. And in a moment I will make space for your impression because it's very good. But it was just that lovely kind of warm, reassuring. I could never actually hear the words he was saying. It was so indistinct, but you sort of knew that he was saying something nice, and the music was agreeable, and it meant holiday hearing Terry Wogan. And perhaps you could do a little demonstration of what that might have sounded like.
It's a beautiful day, and here we are on this adventure. Off we go.
Excellent stuff.
Thank you.
Very good.
We didn't listen to the radio in the car. We each brought with us several CDs, not to be confused with the currency of Ghana. And we brought with us several CDs, and then we would take it in turns to pass the CD into the front and say, I would like this CD, please, track 4, or whatever it was. And the song would be selected. And that would be the beginning of the journey. By the end of the journey, it was simply a case of throw a CD into the front, and we just played the whole CD because it was far less effort than selecting individual tracks from individual CDs. Not that the car had a CD player. What we had was my dad's Walkman set up on Velcro on the dashboard with one of those cassette adapters.
Oh, wow.
For a jack cable, so we could play CDs in this car. And of course, as soon as you went over any sort of, as soon as the road stopped being a perfect sheet of glass, and there was any sort of bump, then the CD would skip, and you'd end up with the same bit again, or you'd skip to the next track, or whatever it was.
That's right. I'd forgotten about that. Yes, and if you pressed on it, it would stop. And
Yes, and it was made of very thin plastic, and so if you touched it, it of course went and stopped playing whatever song it was playing.
They were a big part, weren't they, of holiday car journeys? Was back in the days before MP3 players, was the sort of fickleness and characteristics of personal devices. Because we had our personal CD players, but before they came along, we had personal tape players. My sister and I, that my parents bought us, little silver ones, and we used to, before we went on holiday, we would go to the public library in Northallerton and get audiobooks on tape.
Oh, excellent!
And I don't know if you ever used these, but they were absolutely huge, because your average book, even for a kid's book, would take sort of 6 to 8 tapes.
Oh wow!
And so
was it in like a large kind of almost like a video box?
Yes, like a plastic box, and they would and you'd like pop the tapes in, and so we'd be sat there in the back of the car with this heap of plastic boxes full of tapes, and the players. I mean, they worked perfectly fine, but the problems with them were twofold. One was that they picked up static from phone calls. So if my dad was on the phone, which he was regularly because it was his job, you'd be getting bip, 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 bip in the background, and so you'd have to just turn your tape off and wait for him to finish his conversation. And then the second thing was that when the batteries started to run flat in them, rather than running at full capacity until the moment when the power ran out and then stopping dead, they would slowly get quieter until eventually you were sat there ramming the headphones into your ears, like deep into your ear canals, so that you could still hear it over the noise of the road.
Was that a real wind-up? Thank you. Slowly getting quieter.
So you got up early in the morning. You were driving to your tenting area.
Yes, we went tenting. That's the technical term, I think, actually, now you mentioned it.
Yes, I think it's the Clarksonian term. Some early A/B testers of this podcast have suggested we reference Jeremy Clarkson too much, but I say unto them, no, it is not possible.
I would say yes. But then on the flip side, I will say, is that possible? Find out next week. No, exactly.
And on that bombshell.
and on that bombshell. I think it's funny. I'm watching the new version of Top Gear at the moment, and you can tell when a writer who used to write for Clarkson, his bit of or her bit of writing makes it to the final cut, and you go, that's a very Clarkson-esque way of saying that. And then it gets delivered by Paddy McGuinness, and you go, it's not quite landed the same way as I think the writer expected it to.
Yeah.
Oh, this week we're going to look at cars. And you're like, that's not...
Fastest car
the fastest
in
car in the world.
Time to let the car see the racetrack.
No likey, no lighty, unless you're indicating, in which case make sure you do it.
Don't be dirty. You're changing there.
Don't be dirty.
You've gone Lancashire.
He is Lancashire, he's from Bolton.
Oh, of course he is.
Anyway,
so tenting.
We went tenting, and I loved tenting because we cooked our meals, and I don't know how many times we did this, but we cooked our meals on a little trangia, which are these fantastic aluminium camping stoves with a little burner for some methylated spirits, which smelled amazing. And I'm sure we did this a few times, but we then moved on to... We had a caravan for a while. We had several caravans, not all at the same time. That would have formed a caravan of caravans. But we had caravans. But we also did holiday homes. I went to different places up and down the country, as you'd imagine.
Yeah.
But they were, and this is an important thing, which will juxtapose what you're about to say about your holidays, is they were all in Blighty.
Ah, yes.
Never further afield than, let's say, a 9-hour drive from Richmond to the Isle of Skye, which I think was the longest drive we did.
That's pretty bold with small children. I mean, your parents must have been very keen to visit.
At the time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, the two of you were famed for being quiet, peaceful children who never made a noise, right?
Model children that did not get sent to a different school because of poor behaviour. Absolutely right.
I mean, your brother was fine, wasn't he? It was just you that was a little git.
People have often described him as fine.
Fine.
He's a fine man. He is. I'm always proud of my brother. He was always my hero on holidays and things. And we would spend a lot of time. We'd usually take our bicycles and we'd go off on our bicycles on an adventure together. What
I'd
my
imagine that. Yeah,
brother
the
suggested
tenting.
we do was what we did.
Yeah, the outdoorsy holidays would be excellent for small boys. I mean,
And we
you
had
must have
knives
just.
and we whittled sticks and that sort of thing. I remember getting a huge blister on the end of my thumb because I was pushing the blade of this knife to do whittling for so much. I just got this blister. So the rest of the holiday was a bit rubbish because I couldn't do anything.
Oh, no.
I had this blister on the end. Day one, evening one, sat down in the camp chair with us, whittling a stick. Until your thumb bleeds and you're like, oh, that was a good idea.
No more whittling from then on.
No
But
whittling.
did you do kind of, day trips out to local interest spots, or did you just go and live wild in the woods?
We did a bit of both, I would say. We went, a bit of a hike here and a bit of a hike there, but we went to other things. The interests at the time were Ben liked wildlife, most importantly mushrooms. And
Interesting. Why mushrooms?
He had
what was the
books
fascination
on them, and he learnt everything there was to know about fly agarics and ink caps and whatever the other mushrooms were. And he just had this encyclopedia. He still does, which is why he's an excellent paramedic healthcare practitioner, thanks to the NHS.
Ow!
I see.
Back my elbow.
And that's why we
I
need
need the NHS. Ben, get in now.
But no, he had this encyclopedic knowledge, and he'd read the book, and he'd know every fact about every type of mushroom. And
it's quite a useful thing to know, because then you don't go nibbling the wrong ones.
So mushrooms was one interest. The next interest was, of course, water wheels.
Of course.
Of course. So we went to
What small boy does not admire water wheels?
There was an excellent mine, I think it was a lead mine, called Kilhope Wheel.
Ooh.
And it was a heritage place that had a mine that you could go in on a tour, and it was all cramped and small. And as a child, you're like, this is incredible, going into this mine and stuff. And I recently looked online, and I realised that this mine kind of goes in and then kind of turns left and just kind of follows maybe a metre into the hillside, like a long... And there's a chicken door halfway in case you get a bit too scared. Because
you mean it's tiny?
The whole thing, yeah, it's not going into the hillside, it just follows the edge of the hillside, yeah.
Yeah.
But at the time, it felt fantastic, and it was dark, and you had to put the helmet on with a proper little light, and then there was water dripping from the ceiling.
That's very cool.
Oh, it was brilliant. So mushrooms, water wheels, and steam trains. So we always had to try and find a steam railway, which no little boy could ever survive without being incredibly excited.
Absolutely. I mean, Festiniog Railway was the one we went to.
We went, yeah.
So good. I mean, apart from anything else, the word Festiniog is glorious. I mean, it's one of the best words in the not English language. It's great.
It's one of the best words in the not English language. Yep.
One of two languages in the world.
It is.
English and not English. But yeah, you reminded me, talking of mines and water wheels and such, of I suppose it counts as a holiday that I went on in. I would have been in year 5, so I would have been 9 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely late 90s, early noughties, perfect, topical. And
that is what we're meant to be talking about.
It was with my primary school, and it must have been the first time in my life actually that I ever went away from my family for a prolonged period of time. A school residential trip.
Yeah, okay.
A week long, yeah, to
a
place called, what was it called? It was called Bewley Park, and it was in the Dales, and it was like a classic outdoor pursuit centre. So we spent a week, and we lived in long dorms with 20 of us in one dorm.
Brilliant, yeah.
And every day we went out and did something different. So we went to Brimham Rocks, which I know you know what it is, but for people who don't know what it is, it's this
some rocks
huge kind of
in a field.
But it's amazing. It's like a geological feature with all weird shaped rocks all piled on top of each other. You can climb all over them. That was great.
It's Yorkshire's answer to the Grand Canyon.
It is, and it's better.
It's quicker. The parking's cheaper.
Takes less time to get round.
There's an ice cream shop at one end.
Less chance of falling off. It has a TV show set in it called Roger and the Rotten Trolls. It's another great memory from the late 90s and early noughties.
Which is a reference that has to be referenced every time you drive over a cattle grid.
Cattle grid.
Precisely. Yes, that was a very good impression of yourself.
And the main character of Roger and the Rotten Trolls, which was about a young boy who discovered some trolls living in Brimham Rocks, was called Yockenthwaite, which is a place in Yorkshire, and again one of the greatest words in any language for that matter.
I love a good thwaite.
It's a good sound, isn't it? It's a good
You've got three consonants at the beginning of a word, and you know it's going to be good. When you've got three in a row, you're like,
what
this
follows
is
will be momentous. Thwaite. And particularly it's got Jochen in front of it, which sounds like a really good smack of a ball with a bat, doesn't it? Jochen.
Yes, and he lined up to hit the ball as it bowled towards him, and Jochen Thwaite.
Exactly. So we did that, and we went to a place called the best day was we did caves, but the best day was we went to a place called Housestein Gorge, which was, as the name suggests, a gorge, and it had a river running through the bottom of it that had obviously carved it out, and it was all amazing kind of carved out bits of rock and little runnels and pools, and it was really beautiful. But the water was slow enough that you could walk down the bottom of it, so we were all there togged up in
gorge walk.
A gorge walk, exactly. So we were all wearing full waterproof clothes and boots and wellies and all that. And I just remember them doing all sorts of fun stuff with us. They had us like dam the river with all of us sat next to each other, bum to bum on the until the river was rising up our backs and all sorts of stuff like that. And it was just the best
fantastic. Fun.
So
we went to something similar called East Barnby, which was in the Moors.
In the Moors, I've had double glazing fitted in my ass. No, wait, that's Leeds, isn't it? That's not Barnsley. Anyway, no, it is Barnsley. It is Barnsley. Anyway, not Barnby.
We went East Barnby, which it was more in that direction, I suppose. That was much the same, gorge walking and all that sort of stuff. We went kayaking down the river and ended up in Whitby. So it must have been top of the Moors. That was fantastic. You end up at the sea, so you go along the river, you end up in the estuary.
Wow.
And then you kind of come off at a pier near the very
in
end.
Whitby.
In Whitby.
Gosh, you must have paddled a long way.
Well, we were going downstream, so that did help a bit.
That's really cool.
I don't know how far we went though. That was great fun. School trips though were fantastic. I think I have had the best school trip.
Oh yes, this is a good cue. Tell us.
A good
Master.
Kew. Interesting you bring up Kew. We did in fact go to the Kew is it called Kew Bridge? I can't remember. Anyway, the Kew pumping station.
Oh, in London.
In London. So it was a school trip to London. I think I was in year 3 or 4. I wasn't very old. Maybe it was 5 or 6. I don't know. But we went on a school trip to London, and it was called Science Night.
Oh.
It was a single night. So we went down very early in the morning, had a day in London, stayed overnight, a day in London, and then we drove back quite late. And that was Science Night, and it was fantastic. We stayed. Our place of rest at the end of a long, weary day going around London was HMS Belfast.
Wah, wah, wah.
Which is a battle. It's not a battleship. It is a light cruiser, actually, if we're going to be correct about this.
Oh, I see.
It's a light cruiser. My brother Ben had made a beautiful model of it in Airfix, in 1 in 700 scale, or whatever it was. And this was one of the first models he'd built. And because it was so kind of fiddly in detail and small, as we talked about when we talked about Airfix, all of the features on it were just kind of a blob of glue.
So it was effectively a cylinder
together. I don't think this kit was possible unless you had tweezers and far too much time in your hands. But he made this model, and so HMS Belfast was a thing that we knew about. And then we went and slept on HMS Belfast, down in the bowels of the ship, on the bunks that the crew slept on. When it was a proper warship. Oh, it was fantastic.
It's I mean, I can't imagine anything that would have made me happy at age 10 or whatever you were.
It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And these beds were kind of like a fabric strung between two poles. It's kind of hammock-esque, but kind of a halfway between a hammock and a bunk bed. And they went 3 levels up, but the top level was cordoned off because that was too dangerous for small children. But we slept down it was brilliant. And then the next day we just ran around the ship. And they said, you have free reign of the ship.
Oh,
we didn't go off with a teacher. We just went off, and I think you had to be in a group of 3 or more, and that was it. That was the rule. And we just explored.
It's quite good, isn't it, for the teachers? Because there's only so far you can go.
Yeah,
like,
so
if you were to get lost,
somebody will know how to find you.
Yeah, I mean, I say that. Well, I was going to say, it's quite a dangerous place because I've been there just as a visitor on normal times, and and there's a lot of nooks and crannies and pipes and things you can bang your head on and get your hand trapped.
Oh yeah, it was. I don't think they would let people do it anymore.
No,
but at the time, in the late 90s, early noughties, it was
healthy on age.
Sufficiently allowable that we did that. And we went down through the engine room, and we went up through where they cook the food, and there was the aircraft hangar, because they had a couple of aircraft that they'd launch off a catapult on the side of
They
the
have an
plane.
aircraft hangar on the Belfast.
They do. They had.
I've never seen that.
They launched the aircraft were called. I think they were Supermarine, which is the company that made Spitfires. Supermarine Walrus.
Oh yes, the least sexy airplane name of all time.
Which looked like a canoe which a biplane had crashed into, is what it looked like.
And everyone thought better of it and decided never to use them.
Yeah, well, this is it, and then they just ended up shoved on these boats, but they were for reconnaissance and that sort of thing.
I did not know the Belfast had planes on it. That's fascinating.
It has a couple of little planes. So I think what's the main hall where people go and have talks and they do events and corporate stuff. That is the hangar where they stored one, and then they'd have another one on the catapult ready to fire off the side of the ship.
That's really cool.
And then
I have a couple of
land, a little crane, pick it up, put it back in. It was brilliant.
It's very good, yeah. I have a couple of interesting tidbits in relation to the HMS Belfast. The first of which is that we were family friends with a chap who did his naval training on the Belfast at the start of the war.
Yeah.
And then ran, not on the Belfast, but he ran convoys in the Arctic during the during the Battle of the Atlantic, and has medals from the Soviet Union saying thanks ever so much for helping us have food and that sort of thing. And he went to.
Goodness, wow.
Did he go to Russia or no? He went to the Russian embassy when he was in his 80s, I think, to receive another medal.
Can you do an impression then of what's happening? A man from the HMS Belfast. Let's just run with the Belfast accent. Meeting someone from Russia. Can you do both? I want to hear that interaction.
Okay. Hello, it's ever so nice to be here to collect this medal from you, the Russian ambassador, who looks terribly shifty, but I'm sure it's terribly nice. Yes, here is medal for running guns and other things to us here in Murmansk. Oh, terribly kind. Thank you so much. I shall see you at the next reunion. Thanks ever so much. Goodbye.
I thought it was excellent. Was the first guy the Russian or the second guy?
Well, the second guy was actually from the Ukraine.
I was from the Ukraine. Sorry. So Eastern Bloc is what
specifically the Crimea, Ukrainian.
Yeah.
God,
you're playing with fire.
Don't shoot me, Putin, please.
Putin, leave me alone, Putin.
So that's cool.
Mr. Putin.
And then the second thing is that
that is very cool. That's an amazing.
Very randomly, it is very cool, isn't it? And slightly randomly, for various reasons, I was invited to go and be on the Belfast for their 75th anniversary of D-Day celebrations.
Yes.
And
that wasn't in the early noughties and late 90s.
No, it was later than that, because 75 years after 1944 is somewhat later than that. But nevertheless, quite a cool story in relation to the Belfast. And yeah, we saw D-Day veterans sharing their stories and ate food and hobnobbed, and it was good.
Did you get to play on the anti-aircraft guns?
But no, I didn't. But they did fire the cannons.
Oh, that's very exciting.
Yes, the ones that are aimed at the service station on
There's
the M25.
a service station, isn't there? Yes, exactly.
They fired them in sleep. Anyway, we've been talking about the ship for a while now, which we're beginning to get off. We're beginning to do what we tend to do.
We drifted off topic. We're adrift,
which the
sea.
Belfast does not do these days. But
No.
yes, in a Belfasty manner.
Absolutely, in a Belfast manner. It's not where we
Belfast
go now.
manner.
A Belfast manner.
A Belfast manner.
Catch yourself on there.
Longer and longer.
Belfast manner.
Where are our bags? That's another joke that doesn't belong to us that we've shamelessly stolen.
As all good jokes.
Shamelessly stolen. Yes, but kayaking, which you mentioned, kayaking down to the wonderful world of Whitby, which is very good and has many things, including Goths, rock, jade, and
Dracula.
Dracula, exactly, and very good battered haggis.
Battered haggis.
Battered haggis.
Battered haggis. Those are two words I never thought I'd hear together.
I know, just like Booster Kush.
Booster Kush.
And his battered haggis.
Booster, where's your haggis? I don't know, man. I've lost my haggis. I had it down here, but I think it's battered.
I've had it for many years. It used to be pristine, but these days it is quite battered.
Man, it's pretty battered now. My poor haggis. Booster, you need to take better care. Wait, our voices have swept. Oh, that doesn't matter. Never mind. Am I Booster or you? I don't know who's Booster no more. You never loved me, did you, John? Who's John? We got slightly confused there. Sorry, you were segueing beautifully from kayaks to Whitby.
Kayaks to actually, do you know what? I think you should just resume your booster chat.
Booster Kush. Hello. My name's Booster Kush, and I'm here to tell you about new traditional battered haggis. It sounds amazing, and it is. Come on down to Whitby. We got all the battered haggis a man could want. Come on, Booster. Let's get some haggis, son. Booster Kush's battered haggis. I think we've peaked. I think this is the last episode ever. That's it. Thanks, folks, for listening.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Booster
Kush will return. Same bat time, same bat place, Mr. Batman.
Mr. Batman.
Mr. Booster.
So,
now, can you do Michael Caine interviews Booster Kush about...
Right, Mr. Kush. Oh, I've already lost as to who's who. Am I Batman or you Batman? Man, I don't know who's who. I'm an entirely different person.
Mr. Booster.
That's right, Mr. Booster. Mr. Batman, what you doing over here?
Segue. So the segue was kayaks in Whitby and kayaking. I've never done river kayaking, but I have done sea kayaking, or rather, as they call it in this country to which we are now turning our attention, fjord kayaking.
Hurgy, durgy.
Kaya fjordaking. 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 Fantastisk. And the country is, of course, Norway.
Norway, man.
Norway.
I can't believe it. You're coming over here with your Norway. Oh.
It's another episode of Don't Tell the Bride.
Don't tell the bride. I don't even know, do I? I don't know what that is. Anyway.
So my uncle, my mother's brother, had aged around 23, 24, something like that. He had the really rather brilliant idea of marrying a Norwegian. He was, helped along in this endeavour by the fact that a Norwegian fell in love with him, and he fell in love with her, and so they were married, as young people in love are wont to do, and he was thus enabled to obtain a visa.
Thusly enabled, Ed.
And move Ed thusly unto Norway, which...
Forsooth.
Time for some consumer advice. If you, or anyone close to you, ever get the chance to move to Norway, do it in an instant. Do it as though there are wolves chasing you.
What are you waiting for? Come on. Do it. Get there. It's a beautiful place. What are you waiting for? Come on. I don't even know why you're still here. It's got beautiful fjords and fields and people, It's just great. Get there. What are you waiting for? Come on.
You had a long day at work today.
I'm on holiday. This is what happens.
Oh, I see. Even
work
worse.
Wears me down. It battens it down inside the voices.
But freedom releases the Arnold.
Exactly.
Release the Arnold. Yes, but Norway, brilliant place. Absolutely go there if you can. And so because my uncle lived in Norway, and so did the rest of his family, we would visit. Guy. He was the go-to guy. They had a spare room or two, and so we would go and stay with them. And for reasons, Ryanair ran a nice cheap run from Newcastle to an airport that Ryanair calls Oslo Torp, which is the same as calling Birmingham London Birmingham.
Yes, it is.
Not really very close. But we used to go there.
Neither is it Torp, frankly.
It's not Torp either. It's not Oslo. It's not Torp. It's barely even an airport. It's more of a shed and a field. But Oslo Torp Airport, they call it. And and so we used to spend all of our summer, well, not all of our summer, but vast majority of our summers in Norway. And so I grew up very lucky with the chance to go to this country that is astronomically expensive.
It's about
a situation.
It was about twice. I don't know what it is currently, but I remember it being everything was almost exactly twice as expensive.
Yes, it's quite bizarre, really. I mean, it's an odd thing to come from a developed, rich nation and visit another developed, rich nation that is, broadly speaking, on a par with Britain in terms of most markers.
Yes,
and find that everything is inaffordable, that you can afford nothing. I mean, the famous story was my parents. One time we were staying with my cousins, wanted to take everybody out for pizza to sort of say thank you for having us, and we went to an absolute bog standard pizza place. You know, the Pizza Hut of Norway,
A common or garden pizza place.
A common or garden pizza place, and pizza for 10 people came to something in the region of 250, 300 quid.
Ooh, yeah.
Just pizza. So
and that's
anyway,
just
so
the
yes.
base price.
And so, so we were very lucky to get to visit it.
Too cheesy?
Too cheesy, absolutely. You can have one more. Any more to come?
I've got no more. I'm absolutely stuffed.
There it is. There it is. I knew there was another one lurking in the rushes. Yeah.
Yes,
So I grew
and
up.
did they pay? Did they pay £200 million in order to buy the pizzas for the family? Your uncle didn't step in and go, "Don't worry, poor now entirely English people. I'll step in and pay half or whatever."
No, I think they went ahead. I mean, I didn't think it was a complete surprise to them. You know, they'd been to Norway before. I think they sort of went into it with eyes open.
That's true.
But it's just a good example of how expensive everything is over there.
And it is. I mean, you go into a roadside kind of service station to buy a bottle of Coke or something, and it's £3 for a 500ml bottle or something.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound, but that's a lot of money for what it is.
It is. Yeah. It is. But on the flip side, you know, that being the case, it's just a lovely country. Everyone's very kind and happy, and my cousins live on the Oslo fjord, and they live near the sea, and they have kayaks, and it's just gorgeous. I mean, there's all these little tiny islands out in the fjord, and you can go on boats and have barbecues, and then by a freak of the Gulf Stream, despite the fact that they are on about the same latitude as the Shetland Islands, it is really, really hot in the summer.
Yeah.
And so I grew up thinking that Norway was a really hot country, and it was just joyful. It was so lovely.
And this was the norm for you, and it bored you, or you the excitement and the thrill waned, did it?
I do remember one famous instance where I was just being a bit of a brat, where I remember we arrived and I was having a bit of a sulk because I was like, I won't be in Norway again. I want to go somewhere interesting on holiday. And I remember my parents being like, "Don't be such a git.
Don't be dirty.
Don't be dirty." Because obviously, it's a great privilege to go and spend that much time there. So.
You shared this great privilege with your poor, lesser privileged compatriot.
A little lad called Joey Hart,
who'd never been on an aeroplane. That's not true. Had been on an aeroplane, but
who never had exited the Shire.
The Shire. Before you take one more step, Mr. Frodo, be the furthest we've ever gone, right, Mr. Frodo?
Exactly, and you came with me in 2000 and we had a lovely time. It was very good, wasn't it?
It was great.
And you've been back twice, in fact, because for some reason my cousins decided they liked you.
They did decide they liked me. I think they liked me more than you, which I think is it's hard.
They're probably trying to
but
trade me in for a better model.
Exactly. I'm less maintenance because I'm smaller.
I'm not sure you eat less than me.
No, that's definitely not true. And they had a multitude. Can we talk about this? Can we talk about the cupboards of plenty?
I think we can.
Which were not all they seemed to be.
They were not. They were mystery.
So as we, happily nommed away on all the cheese and the bread and whatever was in the cupboards, and for breakfast, wake up and have some cereal and all that sort of thing, and the cupboards were full. And they had many delicious, tasty things until we started reading some expiry dates on some of these things. What was the date on the cereal?
Well, as I remember it, so it was we went there in the summer before we went to university. So it was whatever it was, 2000.
When we were but young'uns.
And I remember that we discovered it because we had our cereal for breakfast, sat and watched 3 discs of Monty Python or whatever it was.
We got through the entire Flying Circus while we were there. I think
we did.
That was very impressive.
And then we both of us spent the afternoon feeling a bit, green about the gills. Neither of us were particularly in a good state that afternoon. And so we checked the date on the cereal that we'd eaten for breakfast and discovered it had gone out of date when we started secondary school.
Yes. Which actually is apt for this, very programme, because that was in fact in the late 90s and early noughties.
And there's the segue. But yeah, so I do remember sort of thinking, gosh, I wonder how off wheat-based cereal can go.
No, the milk was fine. Was it the sugar? No, that was new. Was it the cereal? Yes, it was the cereal.
You hear all these stories, don't you, about people, opening Egyptian tombs and finding cereal
It was
that
a
was
very
still
similar
edible.
experience. I'm fairly sure a spirit of some sort was released when we opened that packet of Special K or whatever it was.
The spirit of Tony the Tiger exorcised from the box.
Great.
But apart from that, it's very good. And one of the real joys of Norway, food-wise, while we're talking about food, is that because they obviously have a massive fishing industry.
Well,
You
I mean,
can
they have
buy-
the ships to catch the fish, don't they?
Well, exactly. The two go hand in hand, or fin in fin.
Fin
and,
in boat.
Fish. And so you can get lots of nice fish that would be very expensive in countries that have to import it for very
Yes.
low prices, even
Such
by
as salmon.
English standards. Salmon, and most importantly, prawns. And the prawns that they get in Norway are huge. I mean, you'd call them king prawns or whatever in the
Yes,
UK.
you would. You absolutely would.
To them, they're just prawns, and they buy sacks of them for not very much money at all. I mean, even by our standards,
10 kilos or something ridiculous. I think.
maybe not quite that much, but a lot.
500 weight or whatever that means. 36
a
metric
quart,
tons.
a barrel.
I mean,
And
for our listeners in America, I think that's 2.5 fluid ounces.
Yes, exactly about that. Possibly slightly less, possibly slightly more.
Maybe more than 3 inches.
And you have to deshell your own prawns,
You see?
which is very difficult.
I know it's very rude that the prawns don't do it themselves.
Yes. Come, dance. Jump from your skin for my pleasure. Bit weird. And you have it with pink mayonnaise.
Mm.
And not pink
And
mayonnaise,
nobody
yellow
knows
mayonnaise.
what's in pink mayonnaise. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
It's one of those weird things that the recipe was lost to the eons of time, and perhaps it was given by aliens, as far as we know.
This week on Tomorrow's World, we investigate pink mayonnaise. Is it real or is it fake? Will it fuel the cars of the future?
I would
That
watch
should
that
be-
program. that was very good.
You should make that a challenge for yourself. Can you make a car
Will it
run on
fuel
pink
the cars of the
mayonnaise?
future? Find out next
I
week
mean-
on the Pink Mayonnaise Mystery.
Wah, 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 wah. Mayonnaise is fat, isn't it? Fat burns. You should be able to run a car on mayonnaise.
Could you run a car? Well, I suppose it has energy in it, certainly. What's it? It's
Yes.
made. It's what is it? Oil and egg or something,
Yeah.
plus 12 essential herbs and spices.
No, that's gin.
Oh, that's gin, or KFC.
You've been pouring gin on your sandwiches again, haven't you?
Fantastically good. If it's good enough for Gordon, it's good enough for me.
The question is, what does Booster Kush think about gin sandwiches?
Booster Kush, I got my gin sandwiches. Man, they're good. Enough to make you want to smack your mama.
I should have been playing the mandolin again when I did that.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, he needs his theme music as he speaks.
He does.
You're gonna have plenty to edit out of this one, aren't you? I think.
No, not in the slightest. Every bit gold, every moment
word,
platinum.
every moment. Exactly.
You're giving me good reason to buy a banjo, though. I've always thought I should have a banjo. It's like one of the few stringed instruments I don't own.
It's
Maybe I
one
should
of the
have
few stringed instruments I don't own, and I'm not allowed to. I've been banned from buying a banjo.
What?
I know. I have a mandolin, I have a ukulele, I have a guitar, I have a thing, but I don't have a banjo, and it has been. What I want is, and they sell these banjos stringed like a guitar.
Do you mean strung?
No, string ed. A banjo, string ed, avec la guitar.
String edge with the very highest specifications.
You can buy a 6-string banjo because they're usually tuned. Are they tuned like a violin, like a mandolin?
I don't actually know which
and
notes
then they
they're
have a
tuned
weird
to.
short string,
They do.
the fifth meat.
I sort of can see how that would, shorten the learning curve of getting to the point where you could play the banjo.
It depends.
but
Do you want the
equally-
banjo sound, or do you want the authentic banjo experience?
I think I'd want the authentic banjo experience. Although I did know somebody at university who had a banjolele, which is a whole nother ball game.
Yes. Now that's strung like a ukulele, so that
It
would be
is.
a similar. I think it's mostly because you are incredibly talented at stringed instruments, whereas I know some chords.
But I've just realised something that really speaks in favour of the idea of a banjo that's strung like a guitar, because if you combine the two words, what you have in fact is a banter.
or a ganjo.
Or ganjo. Ganjo, banter. That's pleased me greatly. I must have a
Got
bantar.
ganja, got my band.
Just so I can tell people, I'm going to play the bantar. I'm just going to go and play the bantar.
It's like totally got 6 strings. I mean, that is just what you want when you're playing a stringed
Hilarious.
instrument. It's banjar.
The Jack Whitehall of instruments.
He is a 6-stringed banjolele.
Bantar merchant.
Certainly. Sorry, in Norway. Yes, you took me to Norway. We went to the sights and smells of Norway. They were making a Viking longship. I think they were perhaps planning another invasion. I certainly would welcome that.
I, for one, welcome our new Norwegian overlords. I actually genuinely would.
Hi, 100%. But they were making it, and they had like a little tool shed where they had all the tools. And there was no one there because it was a weekend or something, and so nobody was working on it. But they just had the little tool shed with all the tools just lent up against it. And did it even have a little rope around it? I'm not sure that it did.
No, really, it was just sat there.
I think it was just sat there. And obviously the assumption was nobody's going to steal all of these authentic tools. Because they're in Norway, and everyone's lives here are so tremendous. Why would they need to attempt to improve it by stealing beautiful tools?
Yeah, no,
that was a cultural shock. Because you go, there is an assumption here made by the people who left these tools that they need not worry about this.
Yeah. Well, it's the same as when I remember we went to visit Oslo, and a lot of the houses, well, not just in Oslo, but in one of my cousins as well, a lot of the houses have the names of the occupants painted on little cute sort of plates on the outside, and you think, you know, here in the UK, a lot of people shred their post so that their address doesn't get out into the world, and in Norway, everyone's painting, "Hello, welcome to our lovely house."
Yeah,
it's very nice. It's
very nice. Although in winter, Oslo is, you know, you cannot move across Oslo in winter. I found it becomes, you know, unnavigable.
What, because of snow, or?
Well, do you not remember the ice? That rendered large swathes of the city just simply inaccessible.
Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't Oslo we were in. It was just a small town. It was Ture, but
it was Oslo. You're quite right.
But yes, we last visited when the thaw was just beginning after the winter snow, and as a result, there was about a half-inch layer of slick ice on everything.
Just everything.
And the Norwegians were just gaily hopping across it as though it wasn't there, and we were all slipping around like penguins.
We'd arrived in brogues, which I don't think was perhaps the best choice for winter.
We should have been wearing snow tyres.
Bottom shoe as we shuffled our way across.
You got very good there at skiing across it, didn't you?
Well, this is it. I made the conscious decision. I could either have a terrible time and just fall over, or I could create a sport. And as you know, there is nothing more that I love than creating a sport. Which is, of course, nonsense. I hate sport. It is from the devil. But I did create a sport, and that sport was foot ski, where you kind of crouch down, and then you just let the ice take you wherever, in whatever direction, at whatever speed.
Surrender yourself.
You surrender yourself to the icy flow. And
that's a good pun.
Oh,
flow.
That is.
Hey.
Oh, good gravy, sir. That's fantastic.
That one has just escaped without you even noticing.
Surrender yourself to the icy flow. Use the force.
Ice flow, nowhere to go, lost in the blinding whiteness of the tundra. That's another reference I've stolen. I don't know if there's any copyright issues with that.
Is that another Mighty Boosh?
It is.
Yeah.
Check him out. Yeah.
Oh, that is a good one.
Look deep into the Parker.
Almost
anyway.
As the soup. Anyway, yes. What were we saying? I don't know.
So you were foot skiing down the hills.
I foot skied down the hills, and it was great. We got some video.
Basically, let me paint a picture here for our readers.
Please do an
oral picture, with words.
A mural.
He would crouch. He would crouch to a almost semi-recumbent posture, and lean himself forwards, and thus be even less semi-recumbent.
I would say occasionally recumbent, depending on the ice.
Occasionally recumbent, depending on the ice. True, and find himself at the top of a slope, and simply push himself on his heels over the edge of this slope, and then, rather impressively actually, scoot down it as though he was on skis, but he wasn't on skis, and he was all kind of crunched up and hunched over on his haunches, hunched and crunched on the haunches,
hunched and crunched on his haunches,
CHs, and found himself at the bottom giggling sometime later, and it was very impressive.
It was excellent. It was an excellent way to spend an afternoon. And indeed,
we were all damn lucky not to break our necks, I think, but it was good fun.
Well, yeah, exactly. But it was the only way to navigate some of these slopes. because
was.
obviously the water had kind of started to melt, and then it had flowed and it had frozen again overnight, and so it was just these sheer flows of ice down what should be a nice path through the forest.
And these are the things the Norwegians have to deal with, and yet they remain so gracious.
And yet,
And
beautiful, and blonde.
And this is what having tons and tons and tons of oil money and a population of 3 will do for you.
And a sovereign wealth fund. That is a country who, instead of having national debt, that's not cool enough, they have a sovereign wealth fund. Yes, it's from oil, but they're investing it in renewable energy, and they are a beautiful country because of it.
We could lax Wiracle about Norway for many hours, but we have strayed away from the late 90s and early noughties.
Indeed.
And thus should return for our final 15 minutes or so to the late 90s and early noughties. And I request of thee any further stories or reminiscences that you may have. You wrote on our planning document the word caravans, and you so far really talked about tenting, but not so much about caravans.
Cavanning, yes. Well, caravans were great. We had several caravans, as I say, when we were children, and they are taking a small home with you on holiday, which is an excellent experience, because should you need to stop outside the road for a wee, which young children oft require, you can just pull over in a labour, wiggle the legs down on the caravan so you don't just tip everything up, and then
not on the children.
And then pop into wiggle the legs down on the children, and then pop into the caravan, and there's a bathroom in there, and you can go. It's fantastic. I won't go too much into the details of a chemical toilet and its intricate operation. But that was good. That's not the highlight of having a caravan, I have to say.
I'm sorry. You've just reinforced every single caravan.
That's a very good point. You say the best bit about having a caravan.
It's brilliant. It comes with its own bog.
A chemical toilet with you wherever you go.
You can defecate as you please. It's
you
just
can
a joy.
defecate. You want to go to the toilet at the side of the road? Well, sir, just step right up for here within the caravan itself. It's a very own self-enclosed chemical toilet.
To think that some people choose to go to Bali when they could carry a chemical toilet to
And the best thing
Dartmoor.
is, because you're on the way to the caravan site, you take that feces with you.
I never caravanned. I did tent a couple of times, and always regretted it intensely whenever I've done it. Intensely regretted tenting. The last time I tented was on a science education tour that I did when I just started going out with my now wife, and it's just proof of how much I clearly fancied her that I was willing to troll around in a tent and then try and teach school children science when I am an English student.
I can't imagine a place that suits you less than a tent.
It's quite hard. Yes, I mean the problem is I am very large, and
some would say overly large.
Some would, and I would look down upon them, and in tents there's
you'd be the bigger man.
I'd be a bigger man about it, and yes, I the thing for me that I just cannot be done with tents. There's many things, but the big one is in a house. You don't wake up in the morning and go, "Don't touch the walls, or you'll get wet."
Yeah.
I hate that.
Yeah,
it's so stupid.
That's true. And you
Still
say
a
walls,
bad design,
but they are merely opaque bits of air that stop people being able to see you. They don't provide any sort of privacy.
No,
you can't speak or listen to music or
no, or do anything. It's rubbish. I mean, if the outside was so good, we wouldn't have perfected the inside, and we have, and so we should use it.
That's an interesting point, which I don't think is an original thought, but it is a point well made.
Well, exactly. These great points of wisdom and philosophy deserve repeating.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we had caravans. Caravans were great, and you could take lots of toys and you could stack them up, and so it was essentially a bedroom, which you could also take with you, which as a small child was brilliant. And I took my box of Connects, and I made a lawnmower with Connects. And I made a car or a steam engine, or whatever it was, with Connects, and we've talked about Connects. But that was fantastic, going on holiday and then still being able to play in your room. I suppose.
So what you're saying is, the best thing about being a caravan was that you could go on holiday without actually leaving home.
my parents still love caravans, and I'm building a camper van out of my Land Rover at the moment. So
Yes.
I'm not quite remembering this as well as I should. But it was great, and I love those experiences, and I would not exchange them for anything else.
No, quite right. And I mean, I think it's the thing. For some reason, I mean, I not just because I like Top Gear, but genuinely, I do find caravans a bit unappealing because of the fact that you have to go and find a caravan site and then sit amongst a large field of cabbagey humans. Not really interested in that. But camper vans, for some reason, I find a deeply romantic concept. You know, the idea of you and your little house on the open road, like a snail traversing the world with, the house on your back. I think it's great. I do understand that the reality is probably a little bit more Spartan, but there's no point in going over why caravans are or aren't good. I mean, I'd rather stay in a nice house still.
I mean,
they are available to rent.
I suppose, is a wonderful thing. We've done a bit of that, obviously, pre the event.
Don't think about the event.
We'll not talk about it because people might, in the future not know what we're talking about, and that could be fun.
Yeah.
But before the incident,
if that's you, please write to us at 2021 at the future at
really, did
the
you
past.
not remember what just happened? Oh my goodness, why didn't you remember what happened? P.O. Box
4732 BBC.
Yeah.
I always found that was one of those, talking about memories from childhood and a brief segue, and I should just tangent on my head.
That's an excellent tangent, thank you.
There was always the thing on the CBBC when we were kids. They'd be like, if you want us to wish you happy birthday, send us your name, your address, and £50,000 to P.O. Box, BBC, P.O. Box, P.O. Box.
Yeah, they did. And Milkshake, I seem to remember, always had people's birthdays. Did you
What
ever
was
watch
Milkshake?
It was a television, it wasn't BBC, but it was on very early in the morning, and I think I only watched it maybe twice, maybe when I was ill or something. But yeah, they started with birthday cards that had been sent in. And here's your mum and your dad. They always had fold-away bits. And they'll love you so much. Talking of holidays and the CBBC,
yes,
I once entered a portrait competition.
Goodness.
On Smart, which was the art program. Yes, which was an excellent program. And I got my portrait shown on the television whilst we were on holiday.
Wow.
A portrait I painted. And I to this day, I stand by the fact that I won that competition to go on Smart. But because I was on holiday, we missed the phone call home to say, we'd like to invite you in. And they went with somebody else. Because the young lady who won the competition with her portrait was rubbish. Didn't look anything like her. Mine was painted in kind of, like Dutch masters kind of style.
Photorealistic.
Black to red background and kind of that kind of oil painty kind of way.
I bet they were thinking, if only he picked up the phone, we'd have discovered the Mozart of painting.
Exactly.
Alas.
Exactly. We'll never know. They'll never know.
No.
Just how
your one and only masterpiece is behind you.
And that was a holiday-related segue, so that's okay.
I like it. It's really good. Our sort of version of, well, not so much our version of caravans because it's not a version of a caravan, but the sorts of holidays we used to go on at the same time was, if we weren't in Norway, my parents' other thing they always liked to do was we would go and get little holiday homes in France. Rent them for a week, and the aim was they sort of the game when booking the holiday was
to slowly
how can we get
France
as far away from civilized society as possible. We would always get a gîte that was like 1,000 miles from the nearest human being, and so I would always spend the first couple of nights of these holidays bricking it because we were in absolute dark countryside, nobody around for miles, I always envisaged murderers coming over the hill.
The French murderers were coming over the hill to get those English stupid fools who've got them stuck in their Tannegy on the side of the house.
And there was just nobody around for miles. And I remember once somebody came and knocked at the door in the middle of the night, and it was raining and howling, and I was just like, this is it, this is how we die. And it was just somebody who'd lost their dog and wanted to know if it had walked by.
Bon oui, où est le chien? Le chien ne part-on avec moi? Le chien. Is that what they said?
It's like you were there.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And so there was always that sort of frisson of danger at the beginning of the holidays, and then eventually you'd settle down and really enjoy it. But the good thing about going to proper middle of nowhere France was that they would also go off and find proper French bakeries, and we'd get
La boulangerie.
Les boulangeries, exactly. And I was never brave enough to go when I was doing my French GCSE. I wasn't brave enough to go and talk to Monsieur le Garçon, but nevertheless, always enjoyed that. That was lovely. They were good holidays.
La baguette, le pain au chocolat.
Ouais,
Le-
ouais.
the
And of
petit-
course, they were the precursors to the ubiquitous Year 10 France trip that everybody had, where you'd go with your entire school to France and troop around Montmartre and the Eiffel Tower, and you'd all get your pickets pocked.
You do them without thinking now, don't you?
I do. That's triggered a memory. I remember we were staying with French families outside Paris and then going into Paris each day on a coach, and every day before we got into central Paris they would say over the announcement thing, watch your pockets, be aware of pickpockets, don't put anything valuable anywhere anyone can reach it, the French, they're everywhere, they're going to steal your goods.
Watch out behind you, there they are.
And so every day you'd get off the bus and be like, oh, they're going to come and steal my money. And so I remember being there with my jacket buttoned up to my chin and my money inside and inside pocket, my hands in my pocket.
Of your pocket, exactly.
And we were walking through, I think it was Montmartre area, and I remember I must have just looked. That my fear of being pickpocketed must have been written across my face, because this huge guy walked past me, and I don't know why he had a flower in his hand, but he had a flower in his hand. He threw a flower at me and said, "Don't walk like you're scared." And I was like, "Well, that's not helping."
That's a terrifying thing to say.
I am now. I'm really scared now.
Got attacked by a giant Frenchman wielding a flower.
I mean, it was one of those things at the time, because I'd sort of built up this, narrative in my head of like Paris is full of people who want to steal your money. Of course, Paris is lovely and I love it, and it's all nonsense. But at the time, in my head at the time, that didn't really come as a surprise, because I was so keyed up waiting for somebody to do something like that.
Yes.
But now I look back at it and I'm like, what kind of psychopathic maniac does that to a school kid who's obviously on a school trip?
A terrified school child
That's
just goes up to them
bizarre.
and says, "Don't be scared. For some reason, I have Russian accent. Have beautiful flower on me. There you go, kid. What's
Flower
where you
of
go?"
courage. Yeah, very odd. A very strange situation. Now we're coming to the top of the hour.
The end of the
And
holiday.
It's time for bed, children. So we should summarise and summate. And
Summarize.
the answer is Booster Kush.
Booster Kush. I'll make the sun rise.
I think you should sign us off by telling us in the voice of Michael Caine why holidays in the late 90s and early noughties were better than the kids these days will ever experience.
On the condition that you will accompany me on the Amanda Lynn.
Okay. All right, well, in that case, let's not have Michael Caine. Let's have Booster Kush.
Booster Kush. Right, fellers, my name's Booster Kush. I'm here to tell you that in the 90s and early noughties, holidays were better because you could defecate at the side of a road unimpugnated by the French. Thank you very much, and good night.
Lovely.
There you go, I think that's right. I think that went well.
I think it did too. And find a stop button.
I'm going to press stop also. Stop.
25.